I'm Ben McGrath from Smoothwall, and today I'm delighted to be joined by three special guests. First of all, we've got Diana Brown at the College of North West London. She's joined by Nicola McLean, also at North London, and Kay Burton Williams at Birmingham Metropolitan College. We're going to be discussing early detection of online risks in the FE setting and the critical role digital monitoring plays in that. Welcome everyone. So Diana, if I could start with you, what kind of online risks are you seeing in the FE environment at the moment?
We've seen the other one is obviously going to be around adult content, but the main one, quite frighteningly so, is around race.
And do you think with where the location of your campuses and your colleges are, is that particularly impacting on that type of language that's being used?
I don't think so, because I think it's just normal regardless, and all types of learners are using this sort of terminology. It's not one particular demographic. Everyone is using this sort of terminology to refer to each other, which is quite scary. So we're trying to do a lot of work around making sure young people understand that it's just not okay to use that sort of language.
Yeah. And what about in your college?
Yeah, I think I'd absolutely echo that. It's the use of racial slurs and the everyday language that unfortunately young people today just take as acceptable. They almost expect to be spoken to in written form in that way as well, and don't always understand the harm that causes as well. So it is about that educational piece. I don't think it's necessarily just down to any particular location. You know, we're based in Birmingham and we have the youngest population in our city. We're very diverse, the first fully ethnic majority city. But it's about how we educate our young people on that as well, because they just see it as normalised. And that then is where the wider issue becomes, doesn't it? And they seem quite surprised when often we pick it up and say, well, actually, we've been alerted through our monitoring system that you've said this, and they almost, well, that's just part of everyday life.
If it's going with the masses, you're not singling out particular groups or cohorts, you're passing on that.
Exactly.
Do you find, and I'll ask you, Nicola, do you find that there's a correlation between the use of this type of language in the physical world and it then have a similar impact in the online world, or do you think that it's used more in the online world and you don't hear it so much in the physical?
Oh no, both. We definitely hear it in the campuses, outside the campuses, as well as online. And again, going back to to what you were just saying, perceptions are so important, whereby they may be having a casual conversation, somebody else hears it, is offended, or you've just got to be aware of the environment that you're in and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But no, it's definitely both. And obviously we bend and flex and bring in guest speakers or as you've said, tutorials to address this, but it's really helpful picking it up in an online platform where we see it's almost like the norm for some of our young people.
I think it's that importance, isn't it, of hearing it. You can talk anecdotally about something you might have overheard, and if it is serious, you'll address it in the moment and you'll call it out. But actually, through the monitoring aspect, you start to build a baseline of data. You start to be able to say, actually, this is a trend, and it gives you more of that strong base to have those wider conversations with colleagues, particularly in our area of work. We live, breathe this every day, as part of safeguarding and our responsibilities. But sometimes you've got to then be able to use that baseline to talk to others who it's not there every day, and say, well, actually, we're noticing these trends, and actually, can we look at how do we use that? How do we perhaps make sure that it is? Do we need to up a theme content because of what we're seeing? And that may, whilst we've got common ground on that one, there probably are other aspects where we differ in terms of what we see.
Just keeping on that topic of trends at the moment, and I know we could go a lot further and deeper in with when it comes to language and that type of area. Are there any other themes that you're picking up that learners are trying to access in terms of trends at the moment when on your devices at college?
I mean, I think another one we've picked up is where they look into self-harming. And obviously that comes in as a priority alert, but that comes in quite frequently. And of course, the team act on all of them in regards to the priority. But yeah, that does come through quite a lot, doesn't it, Diana?
And what about yourself, Kay?
Yeah, really similar. And I will give a content warning for the word I'm about to use, but levels of researching ways to take their life.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the suicide element. So that's really something that we see quite a lot of. And that's, for me, is where the real value of monitoring comes in. We've got the aspects we've talked about, which are more about driving that behavioural change and understanding, being ready for the world of work. But actually, this ultimately, in some cases, is about saving people's lives. We had very early on, when I became a DSL, and we were using monitoring system, we had somebody writing a suicide note, and it turned out to actually be that. And that, for me, was the most powerful use of the system that I could ever see. And obviously, we put support immediately into place, and it made the difference for that, for that person.
I mean, even when I'm thinking of, we had cases of one of our young learners being groomed, an incredibly vulnerable young person being groomed by somebody much older, and we were able to
shut it down
straight away.
And I think that's kind of what the large impact of having monitoring in your environments is bringing the invisible to the visible sometimes, because it would have gone unnoticed. It would have been that cry for help, or that early warning detection sign that would have been missed possibly. Sorry, Dan.
I think Nicola's reminded me of the example, but it was the first time we saw how useful the system was, because it provided us that information instantaneously, and we were able to act on it straight away. So I think that was the first time we realised the value.
It was really powerful. And we were able to get, I think she was a looked after child from memory.
60,
so foster parents involved and really closely monitoring that situation, both at home and at college.
And I think that's super important when it comes to FE environments, is putting the physical information and the digital information together to get that picture, putting the jigsaw pieces rather than trying to look in one and then the other. And I know that the way that you guys work, it makes it more efficient for your teams as well, and saves a lot of time, and ultimately saves a lot of opportunity for people to do something that they might not.
And actually, I think it is about not underestimating potentially saving lives as well, because actually, when somebody's feeling that way, they'll use whatever device they have to hand, and the fact that we're monitoring all of our devices is absolutely key.
One of the final areas I want to cover on this is it's quite important, because it moves over from that pre-16 to that post-16 into adulthood. And I know that working with colleges, pornography is quite I call it a grey area. But what are your thoughts on how learners behave? Is that something that's a trend? I'll start with you, Kay, and then I'll move on to you guys.
Unfortunately, a significant trend. It's so normalised now for young people, and actually the age is getting younger and younger, and that causes much wider harms, because that can lead to harmful sexualised behaviours, because the age at which our children are starting to see content, is far too young, and also then it normalises, depending on the content they're looking at, and we're talking about pornography, it normalises what they expect from a healthy relationship, and it's not a healthy relationship, and their expectations then, and that then not only moves out of the online space, but that moves very much into the physical space, in terms of what we then see disclosed to us, in terms of safeguarding concerns, and that can be between peers. It can then be disclosures historically, when we can quite often see when young people come into college, it's that wider sense of starting to really mature, moving into adulthood, as you've said. And then sometimes they realise and they reflect on things that have happened in the physical world, and they start to put together and realise, actually, right, I'm not sure whether that was right or it was wrong, etc. But in our setting, we had a particular shift. So very much a few years ago, a lot of our reports were coming through around that pornography piece, the adult mature content. That was by far our highest triggering category. But then, because we took a really, really strong approach to following up each and every alert, so whether it was that immediacy that I was talking about earlier, about we've got a risk to life, or actually we're talking about behavioural aspects, and we're talking about understanding what is acceptable and what's healthy as well. So students very quickly got used to that, and therefore what we've seen is move that into they're using their own devices to do that, and we monitor those in a different way, and we've seen that shift. So they're still doing it, and we know they're still doing it, but they've gone onto their own devices to do it.
I think something else that came up as a theme for us is obviously the incel misogyny, Andrew Tate piece that came up on our devices a lot. And I think behaviourally safeguarding, it sort of is a bit blurred, I feel. But that's something we've had to react to quite strongly.
And that misogyny piece, I know, is being dealt with very strongly in the FE environment. Diana, have you encountered this? Have you seen how it's translated from online to physical?
We've seen it. I think it relates very much to what you were saying around healthy relationships, because it's all linked.
It's all interlinked.
It's all linked, and having to address the concerns that are coming through, but having those conversations with learners around why it's not okay to be speaking to each other like that. So we've invested heavily in delivering that type of workshop to learners, but also looking at the impact of the workshop, because it's easy enough to just deliver it, but what message is coming through and how are the young people responding to it? So I think it is very linked in.
It really is.
But a lot around healthy relationships and understanding how the impact of your behaviours. So that's been really key for us.
Okay, have you found that the same in the...
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've just finished a 2-year project with an external organisation working around everyday sexism and violence against women and girls and misogyny, to really embed a whole college approach to that. And again, that takes all different strands, of which this is, this is one of them. And again, with the data that we've held, being able to say, well, actually, this is what we can see. And then we're in our 3rd year now, surveyed our staff and students and benchmarked it to the organisation that we've worked with externally, to really then see our distance travel, and that takes into account their experiences before coming into post-16 and then their experiences in post-16 as well.
That's great. It's great to hear that you're using the evidence, not, sometimes it's woods for the trees, but being able to use it in a constructive manner to help support some of the strands of education and relationship education around that. I think that's really strong move. Great stuff. Mentioned before, you all have digital monitoring in place in your colleges, and that's really good to see, and has a real impact, as we've talked earlier on. But what made you decide to take that leap to move towards digital monitoring? Was it something that you heard from your peers? Was it because of a critical incident that happened? If you can give me some of your ideas of where it was born and how it's progressed, that would be really helpful to understand a little bit more. I'll start with you, Nicola, if that's all right.
I came across it. I got an email and I did some research into it, and I just joined the organisation. I really felt we were lacking something. When I did some queries into how we were monitoring student activity, it just sort of was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this makes sense. So I invited in the sender of the email, and it was quite transformative into how he explained what the system did. And I really pushed for it because it was quite expensive at the time, I recall. So it took a few goes at SLT to get the costs through. But it was very, very clear as to why we needed it as soon as it was installed. Obviously, there were those obvious endless meetings with MIS, IT, getting it to integrate with everything, but they saw the benefit as well. What we had just wasn't fit for purpose. And it immediately showed its benefits once those notifications started coming through. I think too, when we had the initial meeting and follow-up, the guy I was speaking to was speaking about AI back, and this is 5-6 years ago. He said there's a human team and there's a non-human team. That was the way he described it. But yeah, it has transformed the way we monitor what is going on our platforms.
And as with time as well, it's developed, and the digital monitoring that happens now with us is completely human moderated. So it's evolved as time has gone. So we're on the crest of the wave. So you can rest assured that what's coming through is how it should do in the right context. With how that was adopted, did you find that there was a critical moment as that was installed and it was being run through all of your systems? Did you find, Diana, that there was a time where you thought, I'm so glad we got this. It was so important because it did X and Y.
I think it was the example that Nicola gave earlier. That was the first time we realised the true benefits of the platform. Because again, we would not have been able to safeguard that learner. She was about to leave to go and meet this adult. And then they'd had a full conversation about what was going to take place when they met up. But we would never have known any of that because she would have been doing that wherever she was typing, and we were able to pick it up via eSafe and block the card, keep her in the building, and we were able to follow up through the whole process, get meetings in place the following day. So I think for me that was the most important one, definitely.
Yeah. And it's when it comes to life, you have that moment, don't you? Definitely.
It was our first level 5 that we responded to, where we got the phone call and we were able to respond. So for me, that will always stand out as the most important. But really, in terms of what we were able to do and provide the support for that learner, it was brilliant.
Do you feel that intervention, that a critical moment, do you feel that helped that learner, and did they continue on in their education?
100% continued, still with us now, and is following the right path.
Super.
Right path.
That's really good to hear, and that they're safe.
And safe, yeah.
Definitely. And Kate, you had a slightly different journey.
I did. So when I became a DSL in 2019, I picked up from a previous DSL in a situation where I didn't have a handover piece just because of circumstances. So we'd already got a Smoothwall, and my background actually is on a data side originally. So I brought something slightly different to sort of the student experience role because I came from that type of background into student facing. So we'd already got it. So really for me, it was about first things I did was understand how it worked. And liaise, most importantly, with our IT team. It was very much driven as an IT product. It really didn't have the stewardship or steer from the designated safeguarding lead perspective. So I was in a space where I was reimagining everything around safeguarding, and this was one aspect of it. So took the product as it was, and it's really come a long way, and obviously in that time. So it was first off understanding how it worked, what it did. So one of the first things was it globally reported for us. So it just reported on all of our college sites as one big BMET group. And at that point in time, we had probably getting on for 8 sites. And every single report was going straight into just the DSL. And I went, right, huge risk factor here going into one person. Yeah. And equally, we've got no differentiation without really digging into the data, which college it's at, how do we react quickly? So quickly put a structure in place so that we had got reporting by each site. That required IT and also then support from Smoothwall as well, because I was asking questions internally, some of which couldn't be answered. So I'm like, we'll get Smoothwall in. How do we get this structured? This is what I want. This is what I need it to look like. And we move through that. And that really then started to improve. Then we moved on even further because I was building a safeguarding team. So I was then, well, these all don't need to come to the DSL. They need to go to the right teams, different teams at each college. So how do we get that structured? So we got all of that structured. So we really got the alerting system going to the right people on the front line at the right time to get the right support to students, which was absolutely critical. Yeah. Absolutely critical. And then there's been a lot of developments in Smoothwall since that time. But we have My Concern as our safeguarding system. And again, that was growing. And as soon as they'd launched an API, straight off I was looking, does it API with Smoothwall? And it did. So the next big phase we took, which has been revolutionary, and there are other integrations available, not just that one, I'll hasten to add. That's what we use. But again, I was straight away, we've got to get this API. key in place. And now for us, that means that we absolutely use the Smoothwall platform. We use the reporting, and that's great with all the additions that have been done to that now. It really makes it much easier. I was manually doing quite a lot of interpreting of reports, to make that into a graphical format. But ours now transfers directly into our safeguarding system, so everything's there, as well as the additional rich information.
And that is a super important part as well, having that one-stop shop of data. We've talked about, potentially saving lives, but being able to at a glance have the physical and the digital data to be able to put that jigsaw together is so important. It saves time. You're very resource stricken in many cases, and we know how budgets are. But having the ability to drive a piece of information to the right people at the right time through multi-tenancy or through a different modes, it allows you then to have the confidence that if something happens, it can get to the right person to do the right thing at the right time. And that at college level and at FE level, when you have multiple sites that sometimes you have to get into a car or on the tube to go to the next one, it's not the case of passing a piece of paper.
No, it's not. It's absolutely key. And I think that, I know you touched on it as well about, the levels and having that follow-up phone call where it's serious as well. Again, all of that comes into play because you're straight into the system and you're right, okay, what is it? What's going on? What's the contextual pattern? And that's really key.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to the next question, which is a lovely segue there. Thank you very much.
That's all right. I didn't know.
Risk visibility, having that visibility, but having the right visibility. You've got digital monitoring in place, which gives you that invisible to visible action, and it provides you with that information. But before that, how would you have gone about that? Would it be lots of different methods? I mean, or was it just this is completely, I'll start with you, Nicola.
It would have been anecdotal, it would have been a teacher concern, it would have been a student perhaps raising something.
Which is still really powerful.
Which is still really powerful. It might have been a corridor conversation, anecdotal, the same thing. But, ultimately, this is something that is being picked up by a monitoring system. So we know it's true. We know we need to act on it. I think the problem is with a conversation or something anecdotal is the truth can sometimes lie halfway in the middle. Although I always say where there's smoke, there's fire. But I think it also comes down to how fast would the reaction time be. With a digital monitoring system, the reaction is immediate because you get the alerts, you know what you need to do. Whereas the conversations or referrals, how long does it take to get to Diana, to somebody else, to somebody else before somebody does something?
And Diana, do you think that at that point it had a huge burden on your DSLs, on your pastoral team, because they were unaware of what was happening? Or
I don't think so, because I think it was seen as such a valuable resource. It supported what we were doing. It gave us the evidence that we needed. It helped us build our reports. So for us, having the tool, for us, it was revolutionary. It was brilliant at United Colleges Group because we needed that, because we knew it was happening, but it was like you said, we didn't really have anything tangible to go with, to follow through with. It gave us the evidence that we needed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And came from a data-driven background.
I know.
And now head of safeguarding. Did you find the same as well? Before it was more
absolutely. I think before it was perhaps more so of we need to have something that's perhaps the easiest way to do it from an IT perspective. Obviously, shift the landscape on now. We've had the importance of filtering and monitoring, which are obviously two very different things, really, really, really reinforced in keeping children safe in education. The prevalence of that has shifted, and unfortunately, again, from the loss of a young person, and a particular incident that happened, the coroner's report, and for those people that might be watching this and not sure about that, what that one was about. But that was a young person who was at a secondary school, was left unsupervised for the majority of a day on an iPad, spent that day researching ways that they could take their life, and then really, really sadly did. And what the findings were from that was actually about what should have been in place, what should have been happening, and we'll always have serious case reviews and actions that come out of that. But I think it's been a really good thing strengthening, keeping children safe in education as a result of that. And ultimately, for DSLs watching this as well, and no matter what system, you know, that people have in or not, it is actually really clear in Kitsy about the responsibility of the DSL to lead on this area of work. And it's, again, making sure that everybody, really understands that. And it's about having that ability to work with your colleagues.
Just kind of bringing that full circle, in terms of what we're trying to achieve is safety online.
Yeah.
Do you think that by having digital monitoring in place has created an environment for students where they feel safe online? Or do you think that you have to... I'll let you go first, Kate.
Yeah, that's a really interesting... very interesting question. I don't think that bias monitoring, it makes students feel safe. Yeah, the online world is an exceptionally unsafe place. Yeah, and that is, there obviously are actions being taken. Laws take a long time to progress through Parliament, etc. And the Online Safety Act and some of the strengthening in there, it's going in the right direction. I think what the monitoring does, it enables us to see where things aren't safe, and whether it's potentially then what they're trying to access, which you're looking obviously at filtering, that gives you a set of information. But the monitoring, if they do happen to find some route, and there's a really new website that's come out that just hasn't had the blocking on it yet, because again, people, the bad things get created, they get blocked off, and then pops another one, and so it's a constant emerging risk, isn't it? But the monitoring helps us to spot that early. I don't think it makes them feel safe, though. I think that comes through education.
I think we should take everyone to another room to have another conversation about that another time. Because you're 100% right. You open a box, don't you, when you start
Pandora's
talking
box,
about
Pandora's box.
And I guess from your experiences, it's very similar. Or do you feel like you've created an environment where students come into your colleges and they can go on a device and they will know that what they do is being monitored and that they feel safer that it is?
I think in induction they are told we monitor everything, but I think unless they're putting something in that they shouldn't be, and they have a meeting, we'll call it a meeting or a discussion,
an intervention. I think I called it earlier.
That's when the penny drops.
I
concur with what you've said about it doesn't necessarily make them feel safe, because I think the online world is a ugly place for our young people, and it's constantly emerging, changing, and it's really, really worrying. But obviously, whilst they're in college, as I said before, when we obviously do that intervention, that they are crystal clear that they're being monitored. But I think going back to the safety piece, if they are in distress, such as wanting to harm themselves, I feel in the element of talking about safety, clearly when we are intervening immediately as a priority, then yes, I would agree with that. But just as a general day-to-day, and that's my context from the general day-to-day. But the environment which we create within colleges does create a safe environment, because we are monitoring, we are filtering. But it's about actually as well, it's the teaching and the education aspect. And unfortunately, when something happens, it's that aspect they really gain a deeper learning from. It's trying to help them navigate, because as soon as they go out of our colleges, we can't prevent what they access or what they're exposed to. So it comes back to what I was saying earlier. It's about that educational aspect as well that's absolutely key. And every college up and down the country will be doing it in some shape or form through tutorial programs, through classroom delivery, and learning about online harms and understanding how to navigate what is a very complex world for young people nowadays.
Goodness me, and the exhilaration that it's having. up with that is a huge piece.
Take AI, you know, into that. You know, that is Pandora's box.
Times 10.
It really is. I mean, again, there's only recently been articles around that, around AI, you know, leading young people down to a particular path of harm to take their own lives, and parents are now looking at trying to, you know, take action against these companies. So it's a much wider sphere, but bringing it back to monitoring, what that does for us, and having a good monitoring system, whatever it looks like, is that ability to make sure that you are safeguarding, because it ultimately comes back to safeguarding. You are safeguarding those students in your care in that time.
And I think there's a lot of learning and a lot of education that's needed around AI for schools and colleges to understand about the impact it's having and it's going to have over the next few years, not just with the world of work, but the individuals that are using it on a daily or on natural basis now. And I think with monitoring that we have and our human moderation teams that work behind this is so powerful. And I will get on to that. I'll circle back to how valuable they are in a little while. But your thoughts around that, Diana, when it comes to the emerging AI sphere, do you find that your students are using that more and more, or do you feel that they're scared of it? I know I am, but hopefully we can get around. You know,
I think they're fully aware of what's happening around AI. I think as a safeguarding team, as an organisation, we're just trying to make sure we're also following the curve and making sure that we're up to date. So when we see the triggers, when we see what's happening, we recognise what's going on. And it's been a challenge making sure that we are fully up to speed with it. But I think definitely, you know, we're on the path and following the right direction, because it's a lot to take on. Around understanding AI.
I think it's the speed of which, if you wanted to research something previously, you've got to have a fairly good baseline of where am I going to go, where am I going to look, you know, what sources am I going to use. You don't need to have any of that now. You just need to open an AI tool. There's many on the market, isn't there? You know, free to use as well. So you haven't even got to necessarily set up an account unless you want to use it extensively. And actually, if you want to cause yourself harm, let's take the extremes, or you want to cause others harm, you know, let's put it in a different space, you can very easily, very quickly, within a few prompts, get a whole plan how to do that.
I think so.
The speed at which people can get drawn in is I think the biggest risk.
But you've touched on something which I find particularly worrying when you spoke about AI and young people taking their own lives. And I know I was reading up on where there was an AI bot or something similar where that young person felt that they were in a relationship.
Yes, that's right.
A chat bot. And I think what is really worrying is when we have these vulnerable young people, or, you know, send whatever particular needs they may have, where they're drawn into an online relationship with a bot and the impact that has on them emotionally and where it eventually leads, I think.
And it can feel, particularly if you've got those vulnerabilities, if you've got a particularly trauma impacted, life, then it can feel like you are chatting. And again, it's all algorithms, and the more you feed it a particular narrative, it will hallucinate, and it will come, potentially. I mean, that's a term, the hallucination of AI, but it can come back and just keep feeding. If you go into AI with a chat around perhaps a negative connotation of that conversation, will keep.
That's where the rabbit hole begins.
Yes.
Diana, do you see anything around AI at the moment when it's used for good? Do you see anyone, in colleges, to create a balanced conversation around it?
I think the obvious one is where we're seeing both students and staff really using AI to create things like presentations and, just enhance their day-to-day work. So those are the positive sides, but it's just ensuring that even though you have used the tool, it needs to be your own work.
Definitely.
And making sure the terminology is correct and things like that. So it's about just being a bit more mindful. I think that's the big one that we would see around AI.
Thanks, Diana.
Yeah.
I think time efficiencies as well. That's a big piece around AI. Yeah. So we've invested in quite a number of closed system tools, because recognising that people want to use it, but again, the particular risk around education and other sectors as well is you need to use a closed AI system. You can't open up normal ChatGPT and start putting lots of student data into it.
No.
And again, I don't think everybody necessarily quite understands AI enough to understand that.
And that's part of the building blocks of making a safe environment for your learners.
It really is, yeah. So we've invested in lots of closed systems, including closed down ChatGPT as well, which we're about to release, which again, and I think the more that staff use those tools, the more it helps with understanding the potential risks and also the benefits. But if we keep this into monitoring the safeguarding world, which we are, our jobs are to understand the risks and to understand the contextualness of that and have enough of an awareness to be able to ensure that we do safeguard our students.
Definitely. And that takes us back full circle really to the fundamentals of what active monitoring and human moderated monitoring is. One of the questions I have is, in the FE environments at the moment, and I'll pose this one to you, Diana, to start with. There's filtering and there's monitoring. Do you believe that all colleges across England and Wales and Scotland understand what filtering does and what monitoring does? And do you feel that they all have that in place? I'm asking you this because I know that you've been in this environment when you've got both working together. Do you feel that it has a clear understanding from colleges about it?
I don't think so, because I think it took us a bit of time in terms of understanding, and when we were embedding the process, I'd say across the whole piece, because I think people would recognise the benefits if it was something that they were using.
I think you're right. I think there will be there'll be a whole spectrum, and I can talk for where we are is that, and again it depends on people's experiences and backgrounds, doesn't it? There'll be some settings where this sits firmly in IT. Yeah. And there might be a little bit, so you'll go from a spectrum of where this sits firmly in IT all the way up to really collaborative joint ownership, led, as it says in Kitsy, by the DSL, and you'll have everything in between there. And then again on that spectrum, you'll have the understandings of, well, I know we've got some system somewhere that does something, do people will be able to name the systems that they use for filtering, monitoring, understand, be able to explain how they work, but I think Kitsy really it has placed that importance on it as well. And certainly I know that has started a shift of more people talking about it. I think it's also about recognising the economies of scale, isn't it? There will be some smaller organisations which may not have the time, the money aspects to be able to invest as much to the other organisations up here who understand the real importance of it and have had, like you said, those conversations about where we need to be.
Definitely. And Nicola, with monitoring in colleges, we're aware that there are still colleges out there that have an element of monitoring, whether it be, but it's more of an unmoderated service.
Yes.
And they're looking for that needle in the haystack.
Yes.
You working with Smoothwall Monitor have a fully functional 24/7, 365 human moderated team behind every single incident. Do you think that there is a big gulf between the two, or?
I think it's a massive risk for any organisation if you're purely relying on that filtering aspect. Number one, where does it sit? Is it with IT? Do they have a safeguarding background? When are they checking it? How often? Are they checking it consistently? Are they looking at it perhaps once a week? It's all those sorts of aspects. So I know, going back to when I first discovered this system, I like yourself, I've got a real professional curiosity about systems. And I was like, how are you picking up this? How are you picking up that? Yeah. And I was driving them mad. And I'm like, I was really finding myself getting quite frantic with the risk that we had as an organisation, thinking this is just not good enough. And I must have, it's one of those things, fate. This email dropped in my inbox and I thought, this is exactly what we need. Yeah. And it sits with the safeguarding team, and it's not up to them to monitor what's going on in the organisation. It's done by an external company and they're alerting us.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a win-win, really. And it was obvious by once we had it installed and it was working as it should, just how much we were missing.
100%.
I mean, all I would say to other colleges or educational institutions, if you're relying on filtering, it's just I hope it's on your risk register.
Yeah,
That's all I can say.
Definitely.
And to kind of wrap this all up, and I wish we had more time, and we could probably go down 11 or 12 rabbit holes on all of the bits that we've talked about. From your perspective, as student services leaders, as VPs, from large institutions, what advice would you give to other DSLs that are potentially looking into monitoring service and what you do with it, and how would you explain to them how much value it gives to you? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it's invaluable. I would absolutely say, even if it's one life it saves, going on the real extreme, it's absolutely invaluable, and it's the insights it gives you as well. For us, this isn't the only service we have that has a monitoring aspect to it. In the mental health space, we have another service that has a monitoring aspect to it, and it's that 365 24/7 that's absolutely key, because I'm sure, as with many other colleges, we have devices that go out of college. If they're ours, they're monitored as well. So absolutely invaluable. If you don't have some sort of monitoring service and you're just relying on filtering, absolutely the risk you are carrying. And I always say it's not if, it's when.
Definitely.
I think something else to be mindful of as well is we all know staffing budgets and resources to carry out this type of work. They're constrained, I think is fair to say, in most colleges, if not every college. And I think investment wise, going forwards in terms of staffing costs and having that consistent approach to keeping the students safe, being able to mitigate any possible risks. It's 100% worth it. It's peace of mind, I think, as a DSL, as a safeguarding team, as vice principal of a college, I know that we're in excellent hands, knowing that if any of our students are in distress or there's something going on, it's going to be picked up.
Yeah. And it's hard to put
can't put a price on it, can
it's
you?
hard to put a cost on it. It really is. Yeah.
I think one thing I'd like to add is the knowledge it's provided our safeguarding teams with. Often we're presented with situations, terminology, words that we probably have never heard of, but it's given us the opportunity to make sure that we're up to speed. So it's always evolving, that information that we're getting through. So you'll often find the team of, I've never heard of that one, but we've had to make sure we're on board so we can provide the relevant support to the learners.
Well, thank you very much for spending the afternoon with me. It's been fantastic for you to make the journey up to Smoothwall HQ up here in Leeds. I know you've travelled from London and from the Midlands as well, so I really appreciate it. But thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
Easy times.
It's a wrap.
Brilliant. You're fantastic, guys.
Is that all right?
If you have any questions about monitoring and you'd like a demo, please contact us on inquiries@smoothwall.com or go to the FE webpage and you can share your details and we'll get straight back to you. Thank you for watching. I'm Ben McGrath and we'll see you very soon.